To me, I know you can interview. I know you know what to say and all the right things to say and when to say them. But the actual action when you're inside the office and how you interact with everybody is much more important to me than any sort of words that you could tell me. I can read your resume and you can be a great fit for sure. But if you come into the office and, rub people the wrong way, that's just going to piss everyone off.
All right, Rohit, nice to see you again. Really looking forward to changing gears. I mean, I've chatted with you socially. I've also had you on our Second in Command podcast. And then I love that you brought my son in as an intern last summer, and he really enjoyed his experience at GrowRev. And I got some really interesting insights into your company, but now we're going to switch gears and flip the switch and do this with more of a coaching episode. So from you, I'm going to ask you to walk me through what's going well with GrowRev, what's not going well with GrowRev, what are you working on over the next month, and where are you stuck? And then just for any visibility, you're the COO of the company, your brother is CEO of the company, and you guys have been building this together for the last 6-7 years, right?
Yes, sir. In terms of contextual background for yourself, over the last couple of years, what we've gone through and building the company, we're a paid traffic agency for the most part. And we started to expand our services to be more full service, right? Taking over funnels, automation, creative, copy, the whole nine, front all the way to back. So we kind of took control of a lot of that marketing because we found that when early stages, if we were just running campaigns and they were providing creatives, it was affecting the way that we could drive profitability. So as we started to grow, we started to bring in team members to, be able to facilitate that. And then over the last 18 months or so, we've bought out our ex-co-founder. And there's been a lot of transition on the fulfillment end because he was kind of heading the fulfillment on the back end. So we've had to go ahead and overhire on the backside of that as that transition takes place. In the meantime, what we did was, as the company was growing, we went and moved into acquisition, really for training purposes for the most part. As you like to say, it's called acqui-hiring. So what we then did is we found that person to replace that, the fundamental fulfillment role, who's an absolute killer. And now we're, in that transition phase of not only are we learning to work together, we've known him for years, but not only are we learning to work together, us as a leadership team, but also being GrowRev 2.0, being a whole new face, being a whole new operation and organization, not only for our clients, but internally with our team members. And I would say some things that we're doing well is we're really putting time and effort into our own marketing. As one thing that we've never done is we've never, ever run our own traffic because we just couldn't. We were all built through a referral base and never had hands to be able to do so. Whereas now we've been able to hire to facilitate the growth. So we will be taking on a couple more clients from paid advertising moving forward, which is kind of nice, which that I'm sure is going to bring its own unique challenges, et cetera. But I would say the biggest things that we are challenged with moving forward right now is being very data-driven. Externally has always been our superpower, but internally has been something that we struggled with because it's not as easy as setting a target for a salesperson. It's like volume of sales, easy. But how do you do that across the board with a creative team so that they're in line with the client's profitability? Which is an interesting scenario, which a lot of people don't necessarily think about because I don't want to incentivize our team to line their own pockets at the expense of the client. So there has to be this correlation between them being compensated for client profitability and growth and NPS and all that stuff. So I would say that's something that we're struggling with. I wouldn't say necessarily struggling with, but we're still trying to iron it out as much as possible. Of course, culture is always something that can be better. I would say something that we are also doing well is really getting clear on who we are now. We just went through and did the Cameron and Herold exercises of going through and redoing our BHAG, redoing our executive vision, like doing all of those things, the team vision 2, our core values, our mission. We're redoing all of it just as a refresher. It's not changing a whole lot, but it's really getting more, I would say, just more precise on everyday things, the way that we operate, the way that we're moving forward, the things that we want to, promote internally as well as externally for our clients, redoing all our OKRs from top all the way down, which has been a big focus of ours going into this quarter so that come Q1, our busy season, we're going to be off to the races. So I would say those are kind of the top tier things that we're currently focusing on. Of course, there is a potential for us to be hiring for leadership roles moving forward as well as we grow. So these are all the different kind of areas that we are spending time to learn, grow, and expand.
If I was doing a normal coaching call with you where we were doing coaching every month, I would know some of these questions already. But as an organization, has GrowRev ever hired senior people from the outside, or have you always promoted from within?
It's been both. So I would say 50% inside, 50% outside.
How many total employees do you have now?
Shy of 40.
So you're at a transition point. What's really interesting when a company goes, I call it the ones and threes. You go from one person to three, from 3 to 10, from 10 to 30, from 30 to 100, 100 to 300. There's an inflection point that happens at each transition. When you're at 10 employees, it's kind of like, you got Rohan, your brother, and he's got a few people managing people for him. When you've got 30 employees, it's you and he, and you've got some managers managing everybody for you. When you go from 30 to 100, you're really bringing in your first seasoned senior outside people to manage and lead. And they've run companies before, they've built divisions before, but it's a different talent set than what you bring in the early days. In the early days, you tend to hire the jack of all trades, master of none, and you kind of give them responsibilities and they figure it out. You're at the stage now where you're going to be bringing people in from the outside who have done it before. They have their own systems, they have their methodologies, some of which are going to be great for GrowRev, some are going to be very detrimental for GrowRev. You want to be very cautious and look for the ripple effects that some of these cause. Every person you bring in from the outside are going to be like a big boulder that you're going to drop into the GrowRev pond. Their job is to sink to the bottom of the pond, and they will. They'll sink perfectly to the bottom of the pond, but they're going to cause all these ripple effects. And your job as the leadership team is to look out for those ripple effects over the first 1 to 3 months, because some of them are going to be very good and some of them are going to be potentially very detrimental. The key thing to watch for is culture, that you've got to be very careful when you bring people into your company that you don't get enamored with the skill set that they have unless they actually match the cultural DNA of your company as well. If you're hiring people from different cities, you guys are largely based in Vancouver, I guess would be your head office would be Vancouver. I know you've got employees globally, but would about 50% of your employees be Vancouver based?
It's a little bit less than 50, but yeah, it's also ever growing. It's expanding quickly.
Will you ever hire leadership team members that are outside of Vancouver, or do you want them all to be in Vancouver?
Yeah, so 2 of them are already outside of Vancouver, but they have a very tight travel schedule to be in the office quite often.
And where are they based normally?
One's in Australia and one's in Houston.
So Australia, very similar to Canada in terms of the DNA. Toronto, not so much. The approach of a human in Toronto and approach of a human in Vancouver, very, very different. Have you ever hired people that have worked for big companies before? Like I'm talking of, the 300 or 1,000 employees.
Nope. No.
I made a massive mistake years ago when I was hiring the head of marketing at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I was super excited because he seemed like he fit the part. He walked in with like a little hipster. He had the shoulder bag and long hair, and he looked like he fit the part. He was the head of marketing for McDonald's Canada, head of marketing for Dairy Queen Canada. And I was like, wow, he's going to be great. He came in very corporate. Literally, his first question was, who fills out the FedEx slips? I'm like, holy you're filling out your own FedEx slip. Like, I didn't even understand. We found out within about a month he was a corporate person versus an entrepreneurial person. When I left the company, Brian replaced me with the former president of Starbucks USA, and she came in and said, wow, what a cute little company. And she did not like franchising. She didn't like the entrepreneurial environment, didn't like the blue wig culture. She was a real corporate person. So be very careful with that, because we can often get enamored with people's skills, but really, really hone in on the interviews much more than you normally would on the cultural side of things.
I said to this last gentleman that I interviewed, similar thing, he came from a very large firm in Canada. The one thing that I realized going through plenty of interviews, like we did a bunch and then we narrowed it down to like 4. And now we're still going, hey, maybe let's open that funnel back up even wider once more. But when I was interviewing the last gentleman that everyone on our team, our leadership team and our board thought was the best candidate, I would say one thing that I'm good at is reading people. And when we were having a conversation, when it comes to the culture side of things, he would be a culture fit. Absolutely. The one thing that kind of like perked my ears was these guys are very well spoken when they're enterprise level. He knows how to do a meeting. He knows how to interview. He said something at the end. He's like, sometimes I'll take interviews just to see if my skills are still sharp. And I was like, that's interesting. And when he asked me, he's like, hey, so like, do you have any questions for me? I said, honestly, no, I don't have any questions for you, because what I want to know, I'll only know when you come to the office and hang around with everybody in the office. To me, I know you can interview. I know you know what to say and all the right things to say and when to say them. but the actual action when you're inside the office and how you interact with everybody is much more important to me than any sort of words that you could tell me. I can read your resume and you can be a great fit for sure. But if you come into the office and, rub people the wrong way, that's just going to piss everyone off at the end of the day.
I'd recommend that you and your management team all read the book Who by Jeff Smart, and all read the chapter, I'll send it to you, from Double Double on people, which covers the interviewing processes that I've always used. There's actually systems in place from the book Who and from my chapter Double Double on people, it's even in my Invest in Your Leaders course, that will give you the systems to know how to interview these candidates so that you know everything about them before they come to your office to hang out. It's almost like if you were dating somebody, you wouldn't say, well, let's get married and see how the first 3 months work out. It's a dangerous thing. Like, yes, I agree that you'll know a lot when they come and hang out with you, but you can also put the systems in place to know everything about them before they show up. Those will be just by understanding the right, very pointed questions to ask them about your core values, to ask them about the skills. So it would be things like, tell me about, your least favorite employee that you've worked with recently. Who pisses you off at work day to day, and how do they piss you off? How do you piss people off at work? Like, really throw it out there. Really ask the tough questions.
Yeah.
So have you ever had any training in interviewing?
Not necessarily formal. It's been more death by fire from my previous job and current. It's just like, hey, well, guess what? You're a leader now. You're interviewing hundreds of people, but not necessarily anything specific to interviewing.
And so there's experiential there, right? But imagine if you also had some training that could show you that all the interviews you've done wrong. And then all of a sudden you learn the skill set. And it would be like playing baseball or playing cricket. Like, I've played lots of baseball as a kid. And then all of a sudden I'm at baseball practice and somebody's coaching my son and they're like, no, hold your elbow. I'm like, I had no idea that there was a way to do this. Like, my whole life I've been playing it wrong. Or I've been playing golf my whole life and I had no idea that I wasn't using my lower body properly until I saw someone so even though we have the experience of having done it, it's time that you guys at your leadership team actually got skill development around the core skills of running a company. Like, really get trained on how to run meetings, really get trained on how to do one-on-one coaching, really get trained on how to use situational leadership, really get trained on how to do interviewing, really get trained on how to do coaching, time management. It's as important that you get the skill development there, because you've probably gotten a lot of training and skill development and done courses on digital marketing. You didn't learn all that just by doing. Like, you probably learned it's time that you learn from some experts there, and it doesn't have to be me. You really want to get anyone in your company who manages people getting skills around running a company, and none of it can be about marketing. It all has to be the soft skills and the people side of things. And I talked to a CEO recently and he said the same thing. He's like, oh, I've interviewed 100 people. I said, well, maybe you've done all 100 of them wrong. He's like, holy shit, right. Like, I'd never thought of it that way. It allows you and Rohan to step back and to look at the whole company more holistically and say, how do we look at every area of the company the way that we used to just look at marketing? Even if you've done acquisitions, you learn how to acquire a company based on some experience, but there's also playbooks out there. I have an amazing M&A firm that I've introduced companies to over the last 11, 12 years that really guides people through doing acquisitions in a way that allows you to learn, yes, from experience, but also from their experience, having done it 100 times. Kind of like going to a marriage counselor. We can learn, like, I'd be the last person to give marriage advice because I've gone through 2 divorces. So I have the experience of having done it twice. And then I talk to a marriage counselor who's talked to thousands of married couples. And every time I tell her something, I'm like, oh, like, I didn't realize like there were actually systems here.
No, for sure. And that's something that we're always, it's not like we're not aware of that. I would say we are absolutely aware of that fact. It's now at a point where it's like time to place and prioritization. We're happy to do that. But at this current state, like right now in Q4, it's like we need to prep for Q1. Once we're able to, step back a little bit and be able to spend more time with that coaching and training and things like that, we're going to absolutely be, spending a ton of time there. Because
I don't think you'll ever have time in your calendar for coaching unless you put the time in your calendar for coaching. And it doesn't, again, this isn't coaching with me. It's almost like allocating 4 hours a week for skill development around the areas of running a company, whether it's doing an online course. Like we had a COO who was in the COO Alliance. They're like, I don't have time to do my calls, or I feel guilty. My CEO sees me listening in on calls. I'm like, that could be the most important 2 hours of your week. When the best athletes in the world, right, whether it's a basketball player or baseball, hockey, whatever, have had coaching their entire life, they've gone to practice their entire life, they've done role plays, they've watched videos, like if they've got game day and practice, I think we need to build that into our calendar more as executives to always be training. Like salespeople are always getting sales training. Don't be afraid of that stuff, or don't use the excuse that we're busy, we're doing, because it's like you will always be pushing that off, right?
I'm not saying it in the way of like we're too busy right now. It's more so like the prioritization right now. We're just really pushing through the vision values as we finish out this acquisition. And then it's more going back to leadership. Then it's going more back to high level. How can we make the company better and like step out of operating it? But right now we're having to really focus in on, and guiding the ship is really where we are right now. That's kind of our main focus, because in our specific use case and scenario, it's like we do things and then say we'll do it, we'll follow up with it and hold people accountable for 2-3 weeks, and then we forget about it. Whereas like we committed this quarter, we're like, no, we're getting everything in line, steering the ship in the right direction so that we get the culture ready to rock, so that when Q1 comes, we're not having to jump in and firefight with every single little thing. Because realistically, the two things that we were talking about is creating room to over deliver, right? That's something that we've never done well. Our team's on Slack 24/7, send us a message and we'll fix it. And then I'm up at 11:59 fixing some fire that could have been fixed in seconds if we just thought about it prior to, or created the room to over deliver, where it's like, hey, actually we're offline from this time to this time. Like if you need anything, please go here. Or if it's an emergency 911, like, hey, tag at channel 911, this is the scenario, right?
Yeah,
which we have in place now.
You're doing the right thing with making sure that everybody's completely aligned with culture, because if you had very skilled up people but all going in the wrong direction, it's pointless, right? So
exactly,
culture and vision is critical. What you just said, I want to switch gears in a second, but when you talked about the over deliver, years ago I was coaching a client called Tenuity. They used to be called Elite SEM. I coached them from 40 employees up to 300. They're a digital marketing agency. They've now got about 1,700 employees. And I coached their CEO, their COO, and 4 of their directors for 4 years. They used to, in the very early days, tell all their customers, you can call us 24/7, we're always available. I'm like, no, you're not available. You're in the shower, you're not available. You're having sex, you're not available. You're sleeping, you're not available. So all you've done is set yourself. So yeah, we will respond to every email within 24 hours, right? We will respond to text messages, and then over deliver and wow them. Be careful with over promising. So it's good that you caught that one already.
It's that acquiescing that like has really shot us in the foot a whole lot. And a lot of the times it comes down on the leadership team for the most part. One of our guys just goes, oh yeah, I'll speak to the team and I'll get back to you tomorrow. It's like, okay, well, why couldn't you just say Friday or like following Monday or whatever it may be? If you're speaking to multiple individuals with multiple different schedules, be quick to respond to the clients and get to it. But it doesn't mean get to it and say, I'll have an answer for you now. Right. It may take time to get to that answer. So give yourself the room to over deliver is something that we're using that as sort of the mantra around the office. It's like whenever somebody says something, it's like, give yourself room to over deliver. You know what I mean? Or give the other guy room to over deliver and do that as a.
And it's also interesting culturally, if you ask the client, how soon do you need to hear back from me? They'll often say, oh, next Tuesday's okay. It's like, wow, I just got 5 buffer days. And I think because the reality is they're dealing with 17 things as well, right? So yeah, systemizing that is interesting. I want to talk about your expanding services, because I know that you guys are expanding your P&L and having more products and more services than you used to have. Do you have a simplified P&L for each product and service? Do you measure the ROI of all of the inputs, like the people, time, and money to deliver each of the products and services? And do you think about the pain and the factor of each of the products and services?
So that's exactly the exercise I'm going through right now with my bookkeeper. We are pulling, because October 1st is our year end. What we're now doing is we're pulling our previous fiscal year, going through not only pulling profitability all the way down to each client, also the team members to that customer as well. Let's say, for instance, some of our guys, they're managing millions of dollars in worth of budget. However, some guys do it in 5 hours, some guys do it in 25. and try to find the difference in there and who's most profitable, who's keeping the longest LTV of it. Some of our guys, they may not be managing the biggest budgets, but they have clients that they've managed for 4 years, 5 years. There's something to be said about the customer service that has been provided to keep somebody for that length of time. Going through that, we know our turn points and our sticking points. So that's something that we're dialed. We're looking at profit centers currently. One thing that I've always found hard from my previous job, it was easier when we're talking about bookkeeping because everyone was on an hourly rate. If you think about it, you're paid hourly, you check in, you check out, you time in, time out. It's quite simple to track who's doing what and be able to associate a profitability to that. Now, being in the service industry, it's a little harder considering, let's say, for instance, our account managers and media buyers are generally our front-facing team that are driving the majority of the profitability. However, they can't do their job unless the leadership team's not a part of that, as well as the support staff as a part of that. So there's video editors, graphic designers, copywriters, funnel editors, automation teams, all these things below that. Let's say, for instance, if I want to say, hey, we have a client spending, or we brought in a client that spends $100,000 a month. We've brought them up to $500,000 a month in spend. That correlates to their ROI internally that we're tracking all these things. Now that's a growth of 400,000 from when we brought them in, which is great. We're doing a phenomenal job. However, how do you tie specifically how much of that 400,000 goes into the support staff itself, and how do you divvy it up? The way I looked at it is, if I take all the pieces of the company and look at it as 100% whole, just slice it and talk. I asked everybody in the company, I said, how much do you think account managing is weighted? Media buying is weighted, all of these different sectors out of 100% pie. What drives the most profitability? Are they even split? What has more, what has less? It was almost a pretty similar outcome, I would say. So it was like 20% account managing, 20% media buying, 15% copywriting, 15% automation, 15% this. So then I said, okay, cool. Essentially, I split up that pie in the percentages that we got. I took the total revenue that we brought in terms of obviously taking out fixed overheads, things like that. And then what I do is I associate, let's say, for instance, if we're looking at 100% income, 45% goes to labor. So in the service-based industry, if labor is always going to be one of your highest costs, right? It's generally number one. Marketing and other things come a little bit lower. And then when you're do it yourself, it flops. It does the opposite, inverse effect. So for us, I take that 45% and then I go, okay, take total rev, take out 45%, and then break out that 45% into those percentages and go, this is the impact of revenue these departments had. Then I took that impact, split it up by how many employees per that department evenly. And that's not a fair way of doing it. But what I wanted to do was look at team impact, who's the strongest on the team, who's the weak link on the team, essentially. And then what I did was I went and, because I track all of their individual spends and managements, I did the actual ROI comparatively to team ROI to see kind of where they fall out in the team, within the team, and then for client facing and ROI profitability for the company.
Do you have a fractional CFO who has specialized in the marketing services space, helping you analyze? Because there's experts out there that have done this 150 times who might be able to, for a very low amount of money, come in and help you, because it is important that you A, do it the way you're doing it, and B, also build some visibility inside the organization so employees think of it this way. But what tends to happen when you're in the 30 employees to 100 employee zone is a few things. Number one is every manager's answer to every problem tends to be hire more people. And that's actually the wrong answer to almost every problem. When you get to the 100, all of a sudden you have real leaders who are thinking about optimization and automation and saying no. They're analyzing the amount of people, time, and money to generate gross margin. They're looking at gross margin as contribution margin, and they're analyzing that. Because what can happen is your more junior employees who are working really hard end up trying their best on certain things, but their best is costing twice as long. Every email that takes 14 minutes instead of 6, and every design element that takes an hour instead of 20 minutes, or every extra person that's coming to a meeting. Steve Jobs was very misunderstood, where he would walk into a meeting, he'd be like, why the f are you here? He wasn't being a dick. He just intuitively understood the ROI of every person, every hour, and every dollar in terms of the ability of those three things to generate gross margin. And he was able to look at certain products and services and say, you know what, for the pain in the ass of that product, we're going to kill it. We would be better off saying to the customers, we don't even do that anymore, versus working so hard to earn that revenue that's only contributing 7% gross margin or 20 versus 45. You know what I'm saying?
We could always roundabout tell you where our profit centers were, but it was never like here's exact profit centers. Here's the percentage that it's driving. Here's the actual number down to the penny. Like that was something that we've never had. Whereas now we have a fractional CFO that's helping us currently. I also brought in a new bookkeeper that's, helping us kind of iron this out. I've also, previous to letting our two financial companies go, learned a lot in between the two of them because both of them had their own specialties and one didn't understand service-based, but they understood everything else, and they were really good at, when we went from cash to accrual-based, they were really good at helping us with the accrual side of things, helping us, work with our ARs, things like that. The other one was really good on the actual service side of things, but they were really bad when we switched to accrual. So we just let them both go, and we brought in-house financials more, like full-time. Bookkeeper sits next to me. We go through things on a daily basis. We're analyzing every day. But I think there is still one more person that I want to bring in that's more of a senior analyst of some kind. That's like exactly that, a fractional analyst specifically to pick apart those numbers and tell me, hey, this looks right or this looks wrong, or why is this being inflated or deflated or what have you.
Yeah, so you're approaching it in all the right way. Do your employees understand that that's why you're looking at it that way too?
Not yet. So the reason I'm doing this currently is because our Q4 town hall is going to be coming up here pretty shortly. So what I'm going to be doing is presenting a lot of these numbers that we've come to find and say, hey, let's get your buy-in on this and figure out how can we make these things better? How can we push the company forward through looking at these numbers? What do we want to do? What do we want to take away? What do we want to subtract? Something that we always used to do, we haven't done in a while, is every quarter, we vote on our worst client and just let them go, even if they were a pretty high dollar revenue client. However, now moving forward, it's like, okay, well, you guys all voted on this client. Tell me how we're going to make up the revenue of this client with all the other clients if we let them go. You have to give me that information if we're going to do this. Like I was talking about earlier, we would love to change the compensation structure to be more driven to incentivizing very much around not only client growth, but client ROI, client LTV, client LTS.
What you want to do is you also culturally want to create a norm where your employees are looking for waste, where your employees are looking to optimize. So where employees can come in and say, hey, I noticed something, we can do this better, right? It's almost like artificial intelligence. The only employee that should be worried about AI are the employees that are not leveraging AI. Exactly. We should be celebrating the ones who come in and say, hey, I noticed a way. So I'll give an example. Years ago when I was coaching Tenuity, I talked to their 6 people that I was coaching, the 4 directors, the COO, and the CEO. And I said, when you guys were starting a company, when there were only 20 of you and you were the 6 managers, you were all managing accounts. And they said, yeah. I said, how many accounts on average did you each manage? And it was like 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8. And then I said, how many accounts are your managers managing now? And they said 3 or 4. I'm like, so you guys were building the company and we're managing 6 or 7 clients. How is it that we've built a company now where all they do is manage people and you're still building the company for them and now they're managing less? They said, well, we got lazy or we got sloppy or we let them, people, sadly, what happens is work expands to fill the space that we give it. It's Parkinson's law, right? Where the amount of time that people take to do something or the budget people will spend on something is bigger because we let them get sloppy. I remember years ago, I walked into Kimball Musk's office, Elon's younger brother, and every single person in the company had this workstation. It was a fold-up table from Costco was their desk. Everyone had an expensive laptop and headset and a beautiful Herman Miller chair, but they didn't allow people to waste money on desks, so they just got these fold-up tables. And if we build a culture now that pushes against that, so measure revenue per employee, measure gross margin per employee. Do you measure that, by the way, and do you measure against historically per quarter for the last 3 years?
No, we've never done it per employee. We've always done it per department.
Measure revenue per employee, gross margin per employee, and salaries as a percentage of revenue. Because as you scale, your revenue per employee should grow, your gross margin per employee should grow, and your salaries as a percentage of revenue should decline. Look at that on a quarter by quarter basis for the last 3 years, which is very easy to pull those data points, and then show those data points to the employees and say, hey, we're not criticizing anybody, but we've got opportunity to get more efficient. We have to look for efficiency. Years ago, when we were building College Pro Painters, we had 8,800 people painting houses, and the CEO hired people to sit at job sites with stopwatches and record how long it took people to paint certain items so that we could actually create baselines for the amount of work people were doing. That's where your real margins are going to come in as you guys scale as well. When you nail that down, because you'll get to a point where you can't be any more efficient. Like we're, plus or minus 5%, we're good.
We would always do weekly calls, hour-long calls with all of our clients. As the client base grew, we were adding more calls. Less work was being done. I'm like, how are we going to scale this? I said, okay, everyone's going to 30-minute calls. 30-minute calls literally doubled the amount of time we had on hand. And I was like, holy like that's huge. And then again, we grew the client base and then we didn't have enough time. And I'm like, well, what do we do? We can't make it shorter than 30 minutes. I said, all right, we're switching to every 2 weeks. So then we switched to every 2 weeks. I opened up a whole bunch of more time, right? And then we did a Loom and a call alternating so that they were still getting an update every single week. So it didn't look like the client was taking a brunt hit, but it made us more efficient. Our calls got tighter. We started leading calls more. There was less problems, less dilly-dallying on the calls. It was like get in, get out, explain what's happening, what we're doing, and then get out and go because there's back-to-back calls just constantly being run. And we're doing that right now with our video department team. And I'm tracking not only unique new videos, but also resubmissions or re-editions of edits of videos, right? Tracking that actual volume because some guys are pumping out. I'm looking at it. I'm going, last month we did, let's call it 200 videos. 80 of them are uniques and 120 of them are resizing and smaller things. But majority of the unique videos are being done by like 3 people. And then all the resizing is done by like 1 guy or 2 guys. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening here? Why is this guy taking so long to do things that are so easy? Whereas you guys are pumping out all these like crazy big videos in the same time that he's pumping out like 30-second videos. This is ridiculous. Like what's going on? So now we're really focusing in it on exactly like very, very specific areas like that. It's been a struggle because, we pay, for the most part, everyone's on a salary base. It's a little bit easier to deal with on the accounting side of things, but it's making our life a little bit harder now to track the profitability by being a lot more accurate because we're having to make assumptions of how long they spend on a specific client. So let's say, for instance, like graphic designers will work on our entire client, but account managers and media buyers will only work on their clients, which could be anywhere from 2 to 10 clients at a time. The account manager and media buyers are spending up to 20 hours a week on one client, whereas the graphic designers are spending 2 hours a week on a client. We're trying to really figure out how can we record that time so that we're able to allocate and say, hey, this is how much time you should be spending to to edit a 2-minute video, a 30-minute VSL, to be able to launch a campaign, to be able to, do X, Y, and Z is really piquing my interest, but it's taking so much time to just get done.
Okay, you guys are approaching all this the right way. I've got a question on your client stuff. You mentioned doing calls with clients, then switching them to every 2 weeks, then alternating Loom, which is great. How many people on your team attend one of those client calls typically?
Generally, it's 2. It's always 2. It's the account manager and the media buyer because the account manager is more creative, more maternal, talking about taking care and managing the client, task management projects, stuff like that. And the media buyer is very logical, comes in with like, this is our plan, this is our strategy, this is what we're doing on the advertising end, this is what we're testing, here's the numbers, let me break it all down for you, etc. So they come in from either end, handle front and back. And then from time to time, let's say if there's a fire or something that, they need leadership to come in for, they'll pull us in. Or if they're cross-selling, they're not allowed to actually push the cross-sell. They have to bring in one of our sales members to fully cross-sell them and set all the correct expectations. That's when they'll see more people. Or if they need, our creative director to come in and give advice on creatives or whatever it may be, like consulting on that call for a little bit, that's when we'll bring more people. But generally, it's 2 people always. One person is leading the call, one person's taking notes, and then the other person leading the call.
That's good. Because you're not having 7 people showing up to a call. One of the things that drives every client crazy.
I can't stand it.
Yeah, it drives the clients crazy because like, why do I have all these people showing up on my account and not saying anything, not contributing, not like...
I hate it. We literally, this sounds terrible, but the one thing that we've always been weak at GrowRev, I would say, is running really, really sophisticated calls internally. Like externally for clients, it's dialed. To the point we know because it was prepared, right? Internally, we've never had a structure or found something that was applicable to the entire team that everyone was excited to show up for. Because I think a call, let's say for instance, and the reason I'm saying this is because we just canceled our weekly calls, team calls. We just canceled them. I was like, we're not doing this anymore. We would have 30 people show up to a call, and half the people are just sitting on their fucking phones or looking away from the camera, like looking down. It would drive me insane. I would ask a question and they'd be like, I didn't hear that. What? And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. There's 30 of us on here. That's literally 30 hours in totality wasted All of us sitting here, we've done this every single week for the last 48 weeks since the beginning of the year, whatever, however many weeks there is. But I could not stand it. So last week, I jumped on with our head of fulfillment and I was like, we're canceling calls. We're done. No more right now. We're going to see what happens in terms of client fires. We're going to see what comes up. We're going to ask for feedback and say, listen, we're canceling this, not because you guys bitched and this and that. We're canceling this right now because we want your feedback. And if you don't provide the feedback, we're going to give you what we want out of this. And it's not going to be pretty for them because it's going to make sure that they have to give us this huge document and have it all prepared for that Monday meeting every single time. And if they don't, there's going to be obviously reprimand for that.
So this is one of the things that I cover in my book, Meetings Suck, is companies should not have a Monday meeting. Companies should not have a weekly meeting. Companies shouldn't have a team meeting. We should have a finance meeting. We should have a weekly action review meeting. We should have a business area review meeting. We can have a daily huddle. We can have an annual planning meeting or an annual strategy meeting or an annual training meeting. But the meetings need to be about specific things and they need to be called whatever those specific things are. There's only a few reasons why you bring all of the employees together. An all hands meeting is pointless. Like an all hands meeting to do what? There's only two types of all hands meetings. The first one is a town hall where the leadership team asks questions and listens, where the employees talk to the leadership team and tell us what's going on and we get to listen. It's like the President of the United States going to a shopping mall, having a town hall meeting and listening to constituents. The second style of meeting is like the State of a Union. That's when the leadership team has all the employees and we update the employees on our strategy, our culture, direction. We talk to them about our metrics, where we're f***ing up, what we're doing going forward. But to have all your employees together for anything else is pointless unless it's kind of that daily huddle, but that's a 7-minute meeting, not an hour meeting.
We canned the daily huddles like last year. We were doing stand-ups first thing in the morning and same exact thing. We had a format in which like, what did we do yesterday? What are we doing today? What do we need help with kind of scenario? That was kind of, I can't remember what the exact phrase was anymore, but it was something along those lines. And same thing. People would show up, be like, this is what I'm doing today. This is what I did yesterday. I can't remember what I did. So I'm just going to put this bullshit in here. And I'm like, what the f-? And then it's like, what do I need help with? Nothing.
Here's the change. And this is what we did at 1-800-GOT-JUNK because we ran Daily Huddle. We started Daily Huddle in 2001. It's 2023. They've run Daily Huddle every day for 22 years. What we realized when we got to about 20 or 30 employees was you can't have every employee speak at Daily Huddle anymore. You get a business area to speak every day. So on Monday, marketing would speak. On Tuesday, finance would speak. On Wednesday, IT would speak. On Thursday, we gave the employees a chance to share good news or missing systems, but it was pointless to get everybody to talk because like I'm doing what I always do. I'm doing the same. I'm always a payroll clerk. But we realized that Daily Huddle had to be changed and tweaked. And if you follow that simple system, the 7-minute daily huddle, but you follow the system we did at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, it will definitely scale. The problem with what you bumped into is exactly what we bumped into.
And it was the most frustrating thing on planet Earth because again, same thing, right? Even though 7 minutes, it's like 7 minutes every single day across, 30, 40 people.
It was a bad agenda, but it's the right meeting. And the reason the daily huddle is so powerful, when you write it with the system or run it with the system I'll give you, as I also cover it in the book Meetings Suck, when you run a daily huddle following the proper system, it gets everyone on the same page, it motivates them, it aligns them, you share any of the key metrics. So here's the key data points that happen with Daily Huddle. The metrics that you report at Daily Huddle are the same metrics for 3 months. And then every quarter you come up with new metrics for that quarter to report at Daily Huddle. Okay, so it keeps it fresh. Number 2, you don't run it at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. Run Daily Huddle at 11 o'clock. It's the first point in the day when energy level drops. So the best time is you run at 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock. The energy drops. It's when people want their smoke breaks or they need a break. They need a snack or whatever. So Daily Huddle can boost the energy. You run it as a stand-up 7-minute meeting, no longer than 7 minutes. You start off with sharing good news. Now, this is when you have to, behind the scenes, push people to share good news. You got to push the remote people to share. And you also need to, if you're going to share, like read an email, don't read the entire damn email. Just read the bullet point. Condense the whole story. I don't need the 7-minute story. I need the 12-second story. I even canned clapping at Daily Huddle because I don't need to hear people clap for 7 seconds on the 4 things that we share because that took up 28 seconds of 7 minutes. I don't need to spend 5% of the meeting listening to the clap. So the system was wrong. Daily Huddle was right.
And that's what I always thought, right? And the biggest thing is, as a digital company, what's hard for people to really think about is right now there's, I think, 10 people in the office, but there's 40 people worldwide. You don't get to see what everyone's doing, like the left hand doesn't see what the right hand's doing. And you don't have that like camaraderie of like, hey, let's jump on, we're all going to war today. There's clients that we got to fix, or this we got to do, but we all know that we're playing a part when we meet together and then we go our separate ways and do our shit, right? It builds this like pseudo culture or like reliability on everyone, knowing that everyone's showing up for this call, listening into the call, and then going off and doing their thing. So,
and what's really cool, when you get each business area reporting on a weekly basis, so when IT reports every week, all of a sudden after 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of hearing an IT update and the same updates, what's going well, what's not going well, what they're working on and where they're stuck. The next day marketing updates, what's going well, what's not going well, what you're working on, where you're stuck. All the employees start to get a perspective, oh, this is how all the moving parts work together. This is how IT and finance and operation and sales all work together. But they're not having to do the updates. It's the head of the business area is doing the updates on that daily basis. Nice. When we started it, we only had 30 employees and it was awkward. So we had to tweak it. And it just got better every time. But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater on this one.
Going back to it, we just don't know what that schedule, that agenda is going to look like. Bringing it back, but making it more of a cultural call, the Monday all hands, where it's like shoot the shit lunchroom type scenario to where we could do fun activities together as a team. Something that we were also potentially thinking about doing in terms of an all hands. But I definitely don't think it's necessary to have that, Monday meeting anymore to where it's just a Monday meeting, like to have a Monday meeting. It's irrelevant. Nobody's there. So who cares? No one gives a shit unless it's State of the Union or there's a big reason behind it. Then what's the point, right? We do our town halls every quarter. We could do a State of the Union, but like, is it really necessary if we do our town hall? Because generally we cover majority of that in there.
Here's how you do it. You do a State of the Union twice a year and do a town hall twice a year. So do State of the Union in January and July, and then do your town hall meeting in April and October. So your town hall, you're asking questions and listening. The State of the Union, you're giving the updates. And they can be 1-hour calls for everybody in the company. Jam group events, they run online social events for hybrid companies and remote companies, and they're super fun. And it's like $25 an employee to get them to run it all for you, but they do like music trivia, online escape rooms, Family Feud. It's like you just get to show up and have fun. I've run a bunch of them for our COO Alliance and everybody loves them. For the money, I would highly encourage doing a couple of those a year and just getting this jam group events to run them for you guys because they can be really fun.
Do you think there's anything that, I could spend time on that would be in my blind side that I wouldn't know because I haven't been past that 40 employee area that you wish you had known about that to where you would have stopped or done something earlier on?
Yeah, the two big things that I wish I'd done more of, one was to delegate faster and to delegate everything. I hear this so often, well, I can't delegate this because no one on my team has the skills. Great, delegate it to them anyway, and then spend your time growing their skills. So it's our job is to grow people, and it's to grow their skills and confidence so that we can delegate everything on our list. And that can be delegate acquisitions. That can be delegate interviewing senior people. That can be delegate managing the fractional CFO to oversee the ROI of each of the things. The key is if you keep focusing on growing people's skills and confidence and delegating everything, that's what really will scale up the organization super fast. And then second is to really learn to say no more often than we say yes. We tend to become a very inclusive company and wanting to be nice to people and wanting to be liked and sure, let's get everybody's opinions. Every once in a while, we have to make the call, but we can explain the why behind the no. It's not like mom and dad said, no, because I said so and it's my home. You can give the reason for the no. It's like, no, because it's not on plan. No, because it's not on strategy. no because we want people to stay focused, whatever. But we have to learn how to artfully say no to people and not worry that people's opinions or feelings are going to get hurt. Like we can't be in the everybody gets a participation ribbon.
I would say those are probably my two weakest points, or those two exact things that I've been focusing on,
Every leader who's at the 30 employee marks need to learn those two skills.
Definitely where I'm going to be putting my time.
Rohit, thanks very much for sharing. I really appreciate you doing this and also being completely open as well as a coaching call too. So I appreciate the vulnerability and openness.
Likewise, thank you for putting that offer out there and helping all these entrepreneurs like myself get to where you've been. It's definitely something that's extremely important for all of us. Like you said, you got to put that time aside to grow yourself.
So don't stop now. Click here. There's more great videos that you can keep learning from, and together we're unlocking amazing leadership lessons together.